My name is Liam, I'm 21 years old, I live in Hainault in East London and I'm an out gay man. From a young age I've kind of always had an interest in computers and technology, and throughout my childhood my interest in technology grew and my use of Google in my personal life and at school also increased. I've been quite fortunate to do a few things for Google on a voluntary basis, including helping out with a deployment at my secondary school whilst I was still a student and volunteering at an exhibition on the Google stand. And it's culminated into me being able to work now at the Google King's Cross office, which I'm really, really excited about. One of the reasons why I'm quite passionate and want to get my message out in terms of being a gay man and also being interested in technology is, even today, there isn't that many people who can conceive of LGBT people going to work in technology. There isn't that many famous or notable LGBT faces in the technology industry, whereas there are in other industries, particularly in expressive and creative arts. But I've never seen a problem with combining my identity as a gay man and also my interest in technology. Looking back on how much I've done with Google and things related to Google, I've been quite fortunate to rub shoulders in my activities with some people who have spotted my talent and, regardless of my identity, wanted to kind of help support me to take another step further up the ladder. So from going from just helping out with some of my teachers at school, I'm now at the main office of one of the largest multinationals in the world, supporting those people there, which is a big step up and something that I wouldn't have imagined would have happened 3 months ago, let alone 3 years ago when I finished school. I've always felt that my sexuality and my personality are mutually exclusive. What that means is basically one doesn't necessarily impact on the other. My sexuality doesn't impact on my personality doesn't impact on my sexuality at all. And I think for a lot of young LGBT people growing up in a predominantly straight world where they see relationships largely take place between a man and a woman, they kind of feel that they have to change their personality as soon as they come out in order to fit in with that group of people. I didn't feel that kind of pressure because my personality and my interests inherently stem from the things that I enjoy doing. For example, watching football, for example, working at Google. Me being a gay man, to me, means that I fancy men, and there's nothing really else that makes that up. Because seeing what notable LGBT people are like, seeing the type of activities that you can do, the places where you go out, the fashion element, the arts element that is typically associated with LGBT people, I don't really feel an affinity to that. I don't feel I really connect with that. I connect with the things that I like. I actually think that me being on the autism spectrum impacts my personality and my conduct an awful lot more than me being gay does. With my autism condition, it impacts on a lot of things that I do. It also means that I have enhanced interests in some areas. That's more vivid for other people to see. In my conduct, you might be able to tell that I'm not as good at socialising, I'm not as good at reading other people's body language or trying to get involved in conversations that have already started. At primary school, I never had an interest in trying to impress or get involved with girls. It just wasn't something that attracted itself to me. It wasn't something that I wanted to do. And in that sense, I was very, very different from an awful lot of the boys in my class, particularly in year 5 and year 6 when that was starting to happen. And moving from a mixed primary school to an all-boys secondary school, it was quite liberating for me that I didn't necessarily have to copy other people within my class. I didn't have to pretend to be like anybody else. I didn't have to try and fit in or adopt other interests that that just didn't endear themselves to me. Sometimes boys and girls would meet up at the end of school. I just didn't do that. I left school, went on the bus, and went home again. Really, up until the end of year 11, I just was comfortable with that scenario, even though by year 9 I kind of knew that I certainly wasn't straight. That all changed at sixth form, and there was a combination of, firstly, girls being admitted, secondly, me not being within that separate room or that separate group anymore because I was in sixth form at that time, where things started to become a little bit more difficult because I saw other relationships being built between boys and girls that I actually then couldn't get away from. From being with boys all day long, I was then with straight couples all day long. And it got me down a little bit, not because there was a man and a woman together, but it was the fact that they could actually enter into a relationship at all and I couldn't. And I know that's a problem for straight people as well as gay people, but I think because I identify as LGBT, it was a bit more difficult for me because there is this kind of feeling on the community, including myself, that we are outcasts, we're cast aside, we're on the fringes. There were a couple of times where I kind of felt, well, am I the problem? There was a point at which something clicked, and that was at the time where I was coming up to my final exams, where I just said to myself, you've got exams coming up in the next 6 weeks that could potentially change your life course. Are you going to let this situation get you down and potentially derail you from achieving what you want to achieve? And so that enabled me just about to see things through. It was about year 8 going into year 9 where I knew I wasn't straight, that I knew I was attracted to boys. In the physical sense, of course, yes, but also I just found it an awful lot more comfortable to be in their company instead of being in the company of girls instead. But at that time, there was still quite a lot of homophobic language being used within school and on the playground. Teachers weren't really trained even back then to be able to deal with it adequately. Whilst I kind of knew in myself that I wasn't straight, I didn't want to tell anybody, and I guess in a sense I tried to suppress the feelings that I had about other people who I saw constantly at school. But because I think some people did start to notice through some comments I made on some friends' photos that I might not actually be straight. So it became a bit more difficult to suppress how I felt or contain how I felt. My experience of coming out and the response that I got to coming out was largely a positive one. By and large, people took it well. Family took it well, which was really, really important to me, and to know that there was still confidence in me and there was still love for me from family. With school friends, that they took it well, and largely the reason why they took it well is, again, because I showed them that I hadn't changed. They didn't see a different Liam going into year 12 that they had seen in year 11, because my personality remained exactly the same. I continued being myself. The only thing that changed was if people were to ask me, "Oh, Liam, are you gay?" I was confident enough to say yes, whereas I hadn't been before. It just wasn't something that really mattered to a lot of people. They didn't have to understand the ins and outs of what being LGBT was. All they had to understand, from my point of view, was the fact that the only thing that's changed about me, or the only thing that's new about me that you didn't know before, is that I fancy guys instead of girls. I guess today we're all kind of looking for a role model to look up to, a role model to identify with. And when I was younger, funnily enough, I didn't have that desire to, again, be like anybody else. Looking back on it, if I was 13, 14, realising that I was gay today, I'd love to see a wider representation of LGBT people in the mainstream media and also in LGBT specific media, because I think both of them can get caught up in certain particular elements of gay culture that are just well known to people. And if you kind of continue to focus on those elements of gay culture, you by default create that stereotype of what people would think of LGBT people. You also have LGBT lawyers, you have LGBT engineers, you can have LGBT tech people, you can have LGBT bankers, you can have LGBT business leaders as well. I do kind of wish that not just me, but also people in my class as well were to see a wider scope of industries in which LGBT people work in. I would have loved, as potentially the only gay kid in my class, to know that there were other gay people in industries that I wanted to go and work into. I think there's a real fear today that you don't want to instantly move from being the only gay person in your class to being the only gay person in your workplace. And showing that LGBT people do exist in other careers, not just the ones that are highlighted in the media today, is really, really reassuring. So I can socialise best when there's a structure tied to it. Politics is one of my enhanced interests, if you like. It's something that I really, really love to get involved in. So at a political event, I'd be in my element in terms of networking with people, meeting new people, talking with them. Put me into a social atmosphere and tell me to make small talk, and I'm just awful at it because there isn't a structure around to talk about. I decided to drop out of university at the end of my first year to concentrate on my venture helping businesses and charities with Google Apps. I actually think it's more daunting to leave university before you finish your degree than to actually make the decision to go to university in the first place, because you're leaving so many things behind that you become really, really comfortable with. And I was quite nervous, thinking, where are all my new friends gonna come from? Where's the potential for me to get into a relationship going to come from? Over the last year since I've been out of university, that's been sort of largely by me getting involved with a group of LGBT people who share the same interests as me. And if anything, that's better than just an LGBT society, because you don't have just your sexuality in common, you actually have other interests in common. Finding a group that are as interested in politics as I am was really, really helpful to me, because I feel I operate best and I feel I socialise best with people who have the same interests that I do. And what I had was people who not only shared my sexuality, but who shared my interests as well, and even shared my conduct, my dress, my appearance. And that made me feel an awful lot more comfortable, because these people I saw are actually like me.